evening and thank you for joining us. I'm Nicole Long. We begin tonight in Tioga County. After the disappearance of his wife on September 11th of 2001, a man was tried 4 times for his role in her death over the course of a decade. Before his conviction was reversed in 2016, Cal Harris served a 3.5-year prison sentence for second-degree murder. He will now head back to the courtroom this spring, seeking financial compensation from the state. Tony's Kevin Quinn has more on the lawsuit.
In March, Cal Harris will return to the courtroom almost a quarter century after the disappearance of his wife Michelle in 2001. This time, he isn't on trial. He's seeking at least $3.5 million in damages from New York State under the Unjust Conviction and Imprisonment Act. The claim against New York State and several investigators with the New York State Police alleges evidence was manufactured and, quote, the case against him lacked many of the sources of evidence normally associated with accusing someone of murder. The claim states the central evidence that led to Harris's conviction was a set of, quote, less than 10 blood droplets found inside the Harris home and garage more than a week after Michelle went missing. It's alleged that photographs of these blood droplets were altered by the defense to enhance its color and make it appear more recent. 2 men, Stacey Stewart and Chris Thomason, are named as the, quote, likely real killers in the claim. It states the 2 men were spotted with Michelle on the night of her disappearance, and Stewart had an outdoor fire pit in which bloody clothing was burned. In 2016, a forensic archaeologist hired by Harris's criminal defense counsel conducted an excavation of the fire pit. Findings allegedly included a button, a dime-dated 1997, a knife blade, a bathing suit or top, the shoulder strap of a bra, and what appeared to be the clasp of a woman's handbag or belt buckle. The claim alleges Harris has experienced emotional distress, economic damages, and restrictions to his personal freedom that will affect him for the rest of his life. The trial is set to run from March 17th until April 11th. Kevin Quinn, 12 News, Tioga County.